Hi everybody, this is Joy at Pine Quilt Shop. This morning we're going to talk about how to use your sewing machine to create kind of a mock hand stitched look. It will end up looking like the sample that I have here in my hands. So it ends up looking almost like you did a hand embroidery stitch, like an outline stitch or a chain stitch. And we did this with the sewing machine instead of by hand. So I want to start by talking a little bit about how to set your machine up. So you want to have a foot that has an open area in the front, or an area, this actually has a piece of plastic here, but it's clear so I can see through it. The important part is you want to have view of your needle so that you can follow a line that you're stitching on. So something that's open in the front or has a clear plate like this one so that you can see through it. It's going to swing over my shoulder here, and I'm going to show you a couple other settings on my machine. So on my machine, I have the option to use an electronic foot lifter. So I can turn this on and off, and when I have it on, what the machine will do is when I pause, it will raise my presser foot just slightly. It's the same thing that you can do manually with your knee lifter. So if you don't have an electronic lift, but you do have that hole in the front to put a knee lifter on your machine, definitely put your knee lifter on. This is the time that you will want to use it. So either one of those options will work just fine, but you do want to be able to quickly lift your presser foot in between stitches, and that as you're doing this stitch, just like you would if you were navigating curves on a regular machine applique. The other setting that you see here is I have the option set on my machine so that when I stop, it leaves the needle down in the fabric. So you want to find that on your machine. It'll be in a different place on all the different machines, but you want to find the option to make sure it's set to stop with your needle in the down position. And then I have my stitch length set at 2.0 millimeters, just a regular straight stitch. So I will show you guys how to do this stitch. And when you are doing something decorative like this, it is important to stabilize your fabric. So what I have actually on my fabric is my favorite tearaway stabilizer. It is a product from Silky called Totally Stable, and it is an iron-on tearaway stabilizer. It is my favorite. So there is a side to it that's shiny, and that is the side that I can iron onto the back of my fabric. So they're connected, and this side is just the plain stabilizer side. It's just kind of flat feeling, nothing shiny to it. The shiny side is the side that you will iron to the back of your fabric, and it definitely is a great stabilizer to stabilize your piece while you're doing stitches like this, or if you were doing some thread painting or other stitching to accent your an applique block. It's great for all of that, and it tears off nicely when you're done. So Totally Stable is my pick. So make sure you stabilize your fabric. I'm going to go ahead and find my starting point. Now, if I was going to do a vine like this, I would mark that vine on my fabric with a removable fabric marking pen. You want to use a removable pen, so if you get off a little bit, you can remove that line when you're done, but have it marked on here. I'm just going to do a little sample for you guys, so I don't have anything marked, but you would mark it first if you wanted to do a vine. You want to obviously know where you're going. So I use 3 strands of embroidery floss. So if you are buying like DMC floss, out of the package it's going to be 6 strands, and you'll split it into 2 3-strand pieces. You want to make sure that you have enough to cover your vine. I usually look at what I have, and if I have to do about 3 inches, I'm probably going to triple or triple that at least when I do my length to make sure that I have enough thread. You don't want to run out of thread partway through. So we're going to get started stitching this fun decorative stitch. So the first thing I'm going to do is to fold my embroidery floss in half and find the middle point. So I've found my middle point, and it's right here. and keep a mark there, and I'm going to take and drop my presser foot, and I'm going to drop my needle. So you see how my presser foot came up just that little half lift? That is because of that electronic foot raiser button that I activated before I started. So I'm going to slide my thread underneath, and I'm just sliding it back until it hits my needle. And when it hits my needle, I'm going to go ahead and take a stitch. So I just sewed over my embroidery floss. I'm going to take a back stitch, and this is just to tack it in place. And now I've got it tacked down at my starting point, and I'm going to go ahead and take 2 stitches over the floss, 1 more stitch, and then I'm going to cross my 2 pieces of embroidery floss. And I'm just getting them nice and snug up against the needle. You don't want to pull too hard, but you want to keep it snug. And I'm going to take 2 stitches. And I'll crisscross again, and I'll take 2 more stitches. And crisscross again. Now if I was following a line, I would be stitching down my line. If I had a vine or something that I had drawn in on my fabric that I wanted to cover with the stitching, I would go ahead and follow that line. Make sure if you draw a line that you do it with something that will come out, so if you get a little bit off, you can remove the line later on. But you would follow whatever vine or whatever you wanted to stitch, and you would just keep going like this. So 2 stitches, crisscross, and 2 stitches, and just keep working your way down the vine. So I'm going to show you how I would end now. So I'm going to go ahead and crisscross, and I'm going to just take a single stitch, and I'm going to back stitch, and I'm going to take 1 more single stitch. And now I would normally use my in-place locking button probably here as well. And usually for this I do leave the threads longer, and I pull my sewing machine threads to the back side of my work and knot them off. So I'm going to just pull out to the side here and use the cutter on the side of my machine. And I will normally pull these tails to the back side. So I used gray thread so you could see where the sewing machine was stitching. Now normally you'll want to match that up to your embroidery floss because you don't want to see that. You want it to all blend together. But I wanted you to be able to see the machine stitches. So that's the stitch that went over the crisscross thread. Then we took a couple stitches and we crisscrossed again so you can see those points. Now you have 1 machine stitch that's buried underneath the loops of floss. So there's a machine stitch that's hiding underneath there. You can kind of separate it so you can see it hiding underneath there. And then you can see where it again tacked the floss down. So it tacks the floss down. That's nice and tight. It's not going to move around. And you've locked it on the ends. And if this was done with black thread, it would all blend together. But I wanted you to be able to see my stitches, so I left the gray in there. So these tails, at this point, I would thread them on a chenille needle, and I would just go right down through there and take them to the back of my work and knot them off to each other. And the same thing here, I would pull these tails and bring them to the back of my work and knot them off. It's a super fun way to do a pretty vine like this with your sewing machine versus doing it by hand. So fun project. We will have some little kits for this. This is going to be a little pin cushion when it's all done, and we will have kits for this, and we have the Totally Stable stabilizer that I love to use on our website, and you can find it at redpinequiltshop.com. So we hope you have fun with this technique. Do some experimenting, try different stitch lengths, try different amounts of floss, try different numbers of stitches in between where you crisscross, and they will all give you a slightly different look. So do some experimenting and have fun with it, and thanks for joining us today.